So I called him up. I was like, hey, man, let me ask you, do you feel comfortable with building, like actually physically building a kitchen in one day? And his response was, fuck yeah. And I'm like, okay, great. I call up the groom and I say, hey, man, this is a scenario. These issues have come up. We're going to go up there and actually build a kitchen, and you're not going to know the difference. And he said, wow, you guys are out of your mind. I love it. I'm just not going to tell Sonia. Then immediately I had my other assistant call like their version of a Home Depot up there and start putting in a wood order and a steel order for us to build things. Our first stop was going to like a U-Haul to get a vehicle. A second stop was going to the steel manufacturer place. This was on a Friday. The wedding was going to be on a Saturday. So if we come up, we're not going to have a wedding tomorrow if we come out. And when the groom got up and gave his speech and he had announced our story, and that was the first time anybody had heard it, I don't think we'd ever gotten any kind of standing ovation like that. So that's still definitely burnt in my mind for the rest of my days.
Welcome to the VELSTRAT podcast powered by Velocity Strategics. I'm very excited about the episode today. We are fired to welcome Chef James Gop, the founder of Heirloom Fire, the renowned sustainable catering company that has turned open fire cooking into dinner theater for the celebrity clients and luxury events across the company. Chef James, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh man, thank you for having me, Jonathan. I appreciate it. It's a lovely introduction.
Of course. Well, it's a lovely episode that we're going to have. I'm excited for the audience. Can you tell us where you're joining us from today?
Yeah, I'm joining you from the Berkshires, the Berkshire Hills of Massachusetts, quite a bit away from you, I believe. It's, 28 degrees outside right now, and we have about an inch of snow on the ground.
Hell yeah. It's a little cold out here in Las Vegas too. It's not how cold it is over there, but we got 59.
Oh boy.
It's going to be like 50-ish.
Yeah, you must be freezing. I don't know how
compared
you do
to
it.
Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, when you go from the desert, it's hard to acclimate. You go back hot, cold.
Yeah.
Again, thank you for joining us. If we can start off, can you please tell us a little bit about your journey, how you got into becoming a chef, and what Heirloom Fire is all about?
Yeah, sure. It's been a wild journey, but I think the same is to be said about anybody. I mean, I think a lot of people don't quite get the idea that we all have interesting stories no matter what paths we walk and, where we're coming from. I mean, I was initially into an arts-driven background. Back when I was younger, my mother had these pictures of me like sleeping with a colored pencil in my hand. So, I didn't really immediately go into the food world. My grandmother and my mother liked to cook quite a bit, but it never really spoke to me until I started to really spend time doing it myself. I got really big into baking, and, really it started with anytime I, fancied a lady, I started to bake something for them. And that usually, worked, at least got a phone number or something of that nature. And then I stumbled across, I did that one time to a woman that, I shot a little above my league. And what was I, like 20, maybe 19 or 20, and a woman was like 35. And finally, someone was like, okay, well, what are you doing with your life? So anyways, she introduced me to the culinary world through I went to New York City. I studied in New York City at the Institute of Culinary Education. She helped me tour around places. That's the school that resonated with me the most, and did that and came back to the Berkshires and finished my externship hours out here. We were talking about just the difference in climate. I remember I worked at it was a high-end inn called the Wheatley, and they had an international clientele and staff. So there was a fella there from South Africa. I remember anytime, I think just the weather changed from being like 80 degrees over here to 60, he used to wear fleeces because he just wasn't used to it being that cold. So it's funny. And then ultimately from there, I got into restaurant cooking, always in the white tablecloth scene, a lot of farm to table restaurants. And I got a little burnt out, just like some folks do once you spend time in the industry. And I was going through a change in my personal life. A long-term relationship ended, and I didn't know what I was doing, and saved up money. I went to Italy for a month by myself. It was kind of crazy. Don't speak Italian or anything. And came back, and a friend of a friend said, hey, I have a buddy. I get a text at 9:30 at night, and I have a buddy that's doing a pig roast tomorrow. Can you help? He's shorthanded. I said, yeah, absolutely. So, I went there. It wasn't anything crazy. It was just roasting a pig, some grilled vegetables, but the ability to be outside cooking over open fire and not inside of like a 4-walled stainless steel claustrophobic kitchen was really something new for me. It was very exciting. So I stayed at them for a few years, and then eventually just sort of went off and did my own thing, and have just been consistently trying to grow. I think there's probably some ADD or something there, that's like, I'm in love with the industry like you. So, in my spare time, it's always going down rabbit holes, looking at seeing what's going on, studying ancient techniques and, seeing how things used to be, and then sort of looking at it through more of a, updated lens of Heirloom Fire. So that's here we go. That's, we've been doing that for 10 years now. So I'm thankful to say, seen a lot of fun things come and a lot more fun stuff on the horizon.
Shoot or shoot. So kudos on that one. And it's very cool that you actually ended up learning in Italy, or got some work done in Italy in the ancient techniques that you use to for some of the dishes that you prepare now. So Heirloom Fire is, can you tell us, is that a restaurant, is that a venue, or is that like a kitchen that travels?
So it's really primarily a kitchen that travels. How we started was literally just having all of our equipment. We built all of our equipment. So it's very much designed to fit in the back of our truck, an 18-foot box truck. So everything basically has to earn its space there, have multiple uses, very
Yeah.
much like Tetris. And so, being a seasonal business, we go, we probably in a year we'll do 40 events between April and November, or like early November. So we're cranking pretty hard. So over the years, the first few years, it's almost like you build up all this extra adrenaline to keep you going, because it's really just turn and burn essentially, and when it all of a sudden comes, it's not like a typical restaurant industry where I've been a part of, where you're going, it's like a slow incline, it sort of plateaus in a slow decline. This is just,
Yeah.
and then your body, it's like
Very,
your
very
soul is still,
peaks and valleys.
yeah, 100%. And so, with that, I noticed came like depression and a bunch of weird stuff. We just started to do more events at our space. It's kind of like our kitchen, our commissary kitchen slash workshop slash lab. We have a bunch of cool toys we play with there, but we've done some small events in the off season. But it's primarily just private events or ticketed events.
Okay. And chef, so last time we spoke, you told me a very cool story, and I wanted to switch lanes here a little bit into well, let's go North Star. When you started Heirloom, and it's something that it can be very daunting. One of the reasons that I kind of wanted to do the podcast was because not only telling your story and how you got into it, but the mindset that comes with it sometimes, and the vision that one has. It's a little bit easier, I think, to have a great job. You can be an executive chef. I'm sure you're qualified to work at any restaurant in the East Coast or the West Coast or anywhere in between. And that's a little bit easier because, the kitchen's there, the staff is there, even if you hire them, but you're going to get a paycheck. Someone signs that paycheck. What it takes to do something that you did, which is start the actual kitchen yourself, or the company. It takes a little bit of bravado, so to speak, because once the operation and its success lies entirely on you, it can be a little bit daunting.
Mm.
So when you started the company and the kitchen and hire your own staff, what was the North Star? What was the vision besides just being your own boss, which is obviously, I think, the main reason why most people kind of do something like this, even if it's the scariest thing that they've done. What was the main reason to have a successful kitchen like Heirloom Fire? What was the main vision for you?
Yeah, great question. And really, contrary to what you may think, when I started my own business, I really never wanted to operate my own business. I just sort of fell into it. And because when I left the other company that I was working at, I believe in, like, change life, and they basically, I evolve a lot. I think that, well, I know that when I'm committed to something and I believe in something, I give it everything I have. I mean, I, work into, if I have a task I say I'm going to finish it no matter what. I don't care if I have to work several days straight, So that's just, I think I learned that from my father, like, this crazy work ethic. So yeah, when I started it, it was just, I left this company. I needed to take a break because I pushed myself too far. And I mean, ultimately, we just had the business owner at the time and I had two different ideas of where the business was going. So I needed to recoup, recalibrate. I, spent the year, took a season and worked at a farm. And then all these connections that I made, folks just started reaching out because I had an impact on them. And I got so attached to this business, I was running it as if it was my own. So we connected and I did a few gigs. And, once without saying anything bad about anybody, I think we've all been in toxic dynamics and toxic work environments, sort of like, when the whole crew goes out afterwards, you're sort of commiserating over the stress of certain things. And I remember the first few events, it was like, oh, you can do this and not bitch and complain or, be stressed out to the max. So that was fun. And, just by doing that, I loved what we did, and My friends and I are, it was crazy. The very first event, like I didn't know honestly if I was going to even continue in food. My very first event was I had Lyme disease. I was working on this farm. Lyme disease, amazing diet. I lost like 20 pounds doing nothing but just like sweating, a thermodynamic diet. Don't recommend it, but I had a phone call. I got a contact from somebody, Andre Balaz, the Standard Hotel. So we did some work with him at this other company. Usually it was on Thanksgiving and Black Friday. So his assistant had called me at the time, and
In New York, chef, or
in
Miami?
New York, Statsburg. So he owned a place
Okay.
called the Locust on Hudson in Statsburg, New York. And
Nice.
he bought that several years ago with Uma Thurman. And it was kind of like a home/wedding venue, really beautiful property right on the Hudson River. And so his assistant had called me and said, "Hey, do you happen to know anybody that can cook this coming weekend, with who wears leather chaps?" Because that's kind of my signature thing. Because when you cook over fire, there's so much that heat that radiates off. And I said, I think so. I mean, meanwhile, I'm on the other side of the phone in front of a heater, bundled up in a blanket. I looked like death warmed over, I'm sure. But I was like, yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. She's like, okay, because it's going to be Uma's birthday party. It's going to be a small party, be for 30 people. Mark Ruffalo. I feel bad. I don't know who the editor of Rolling Stone magazine is going to be there, a bunch of people. And I'm just like, yeah, absolutely. Sounds great. Meanwhile, I have nothing. I have no equipment. So I called my cousin up who worked with me at that other company and left when I left and said, "Hey, remember how we've been wanting to make an oven? We need it by this weekend." So that was on Monday. We literally, put an order in. We built the company. A wedding planner friend of mine who had worked at the location too, the other spot, helped. She was like sewing tablecloths and building props. And the business was literally created in 5 days. Like not even 5 days, like 4 days. It was
Wow.
insane. I still remember like it was pretty delusional because I was pretty ill, but I still remember at like 2 o'clock in the morning on Friday, we were torching tables. We built tables, but charred them. So that
Yeah.
was crazy. And I often think about that where it's like, had that, I mean, if it was some random person that called me, I would have been like, oh, well, I can't, I don't have anything, but it's like for Uma Thurman, like, of course, right? It's like insane. So yeah, I mean, I started off doing this as my North Star, just having fun. I mean, and I'm the big proponent of being sustainable and working with farms and giving people, of having the means to be able to give people like small families that are growing a small herd of animals or growing really, select crops really well and doing it the harder way than a lot of other places do. If we can give those people a voice and tell their story through our food, that's the thing that's really important to me, because whether people realize it or not, every time you even go to a grocery store, you're voting with your wallet. A grocery store is not going to carry things that aren't selling. So we just sort of try to spread the good word through that while doing it over open fire. I mean, that to me is such a primal, something speaks to us on such a deep level. I believe
Hmm.
we became human beings when we learned how to cook over open fire. And that just became this sense of
Right.
community. We didn't have to worry about constantly moving and hunting down deer, chasing them for 5 miles, 10 miles just to hunt for them, but to actually set up shop
Absolutely.
and build community. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Not to get too nerdy about this, chef, but like being able to cook over fire actually helped us get to where we are now. That with the digestion is
Yes.
much easier, and it conserves energy, and then allowed the brain to develop to become what we are nowadays, which is really cool that you touch on that point.
Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely. It's, yeah, we have a lot to be thankful for sure with it. And I think, traces of that life, of kind of going once you sort of smelt a fire going, it kind of gave us the sense that we knew we were going to eat. So there's something that I think even if
Hmm.
you're having a bond or like sort of like a brush fire or, just a little fire pit action in your backyard. I think something about it just touches deep in us inside of like a cellular level. It's fascinating. It's something I'd never grow tired of. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, me neither. Out here when I go outside and you smell somebody barbecuing, you smell the meat, you get hungry, and
Hmm.
it's just a smell that everyone recognizes. It's like universally, unless you're vegan or something maybe. But yeah, that's something that I think you're totally right. When you smell that fire and you smell that, like that charred,
Sure.
whether it's even if it's anything that's on the grill, you could put veggies on a stick and you put that on the
Uh-huh.
grill and you're like, that smells great. I think I'm hungry now.
Totally. And what's funny is every time we do these events, we'll have two big things that usually people will come over and ask us, and we just take bets on when it's going to happen. One is always, what kind of firewood you got there? Because usually that's somebody that cooks a barbecue and they're thinking hickory or oak or what have you.
Uh-huh.
And the other is it's not a question. They'll just say, it smells so good over here. And it's like just when we're starting the fire, oh, I'm getting hungry. And it's like, yeah, we're not actually cooking anything. But that speaks to that exact component. I just think it's something that we'll probably learn more about as we start to map our brains more.
Okay, Chef. So I got to ask you something. This is funny that you said Andre Balaz. So I worked at the Standard Hotel in Miami Beach. Is how I kind of started cutting my teeth in like higher level kind of restaurants.
Mhm.
And when he would come in, he would just like, he's the owner. So he was like, whatever he said goes, and everybody would clench up and get real nervous. And he would just kind of be like, hey, move that table over there, move this over there. And like, I don't like it. And then like right before like the event would happen, he'd move it and make us move it right back and forth and all that. And we used to call him the God King. I don't know if you've seen 300, but the
Oh,
God
yeah.
King Xerxes
Yeah.
that would, in charge of the Persian Empire. That's
Sure.
the movie that was hot at the time.
Sure.
So we used to refer to him as the God King.
Yeah.
But I got to give it to him. The guy has some rock star properties. Miami Beach, are you familiar with the one in Miami Beach?
No,
That
not
place
not
is
specifically.
stunning. It is. Oh my God, that is like, so anytime anyone asks me, because I'm from Miami, so they're like, oh, if I'm not there with them, I think a local or a native can always show you the best places, in any respective city. If you came to Vegas, you'd have a way better time if I showed you around than
Sure.
you go off of like Yelp or whatever.
Yeah.
So the one place I'm like, if you go anywhere to eat, whether it's especially brunch or lunch, because the daytime it's gorgeous. It's when you see the Miami Heat play on TV and they show you the Bay Area with the skyline in the background, that shot is from that bay. And then if you went behind the camera, that's where the Standard Hotel is. So it's if you're familiar, Miami Beach is just a strip of land next to Florida, and there's two bridges that connect it. In between the strip and Florida is a little island called, what is it called? Oh my God, it's escaping me right now. Venetian Island. And so on Venetian Island is where that camera shot is looking at the skyline. So it's, imagine like off the island, they build a dock, and then the restaurant is on that dock facing the water, and it's just yachts and stuff going back and forth. One time I was actually giving a special to a table. It was nighttime. And it happened to be a day that one of the last space shuttles was taken off, and I had my back to the bay, to the skyline. And as I was giving the specials, the space shuttle was taken off. So the couple's looking at me, and then I see them gaze over my shoulder, and they're like jaw dropped. And I turn around, and the space shuttle is lighting up the whole sky. It was nighttime, so it was lighting up the whole sky. It was one of the coolest things. I mean, just speaking to like the kinds of properties that he has, the Standard Hotel in the Meatpacking District in New York is gorgeous.
Mm.
It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, you should have said
I'm
to
sure
them,
that's near the property.
you should have said to them, just look at the money we spend on marketing just for you as I read the specials here, guys. Sending up
Yeah.
rockets in
Right?
the fucking sky.
We launched a shuttle.
Yeah.
Even then, and then because of that company, that AB Hotels was the name of the company.
Sure.
I started in 2009. I was working in downtown Miami in a restaurant that was a failed Latin restaurant in the busiest part of the business district out there. And it turns out that it was the best thing that happened when that place closed, because I ended up working at AB Hotels, or excuse me, at the Standard Hotel. And that's when my career kind of launched off. That's without that happening, I don't think I'd be sitting here talking to you right now.
How about it?
But during the summertime, not unlike yourself, I would follow the busy season. It is very like this,
Yep.
and it goes back down. Miami, especially because of the seasons, and like anywhere else that has extreme weather, like Massachusetts or Miami with the heat. Summertime it's so hot that it's a little bit unbearable to be sitting outside, and that property was particularly outside. There was an inside. The hotel was gorgeous, spa theme hotel. The spa theme they had a spa. The theme carried throughout the hotel, including the menu. So the menu was not only delicious, but it was very healthy.
Mm.
The thing is that when it's summertime, I'm sure Massachusetts is amazing. So is New York and everything in the New England area. So we didn't get those folks. But when it came to wintertime, we were laughing about how not cold it is here. And you're like, what is it, 20 something degrees?
Yeah.
So the snowbirds would come down to Miami, and we have Art Basel, which is like the art capital of the world, for 2 weeks
Yeah.
in Miami Beach. So they're like, hey, we have this sister property, Sunset Beach on Shelter Island. If you're familiar with it, I'm not sure if you've been to Long Island. It's kind of like a gator mouth, kind of like
Okay.
this. And here is the little island. There's no bridges. It's just ferries back and forth. But they have this property, it's only 20 rooms, but like very big studio size, or call it loft size, high ceiling properties, rooms.
Mhm.
So they're pretty expensive. And then the sister property in front of it, or sorry, the restaurant attached to it was French Bistro.
Mm.
And the folks that could afford to go there really were folks that had a place in Manhattan and a home in the Hamptons.
Sure.
So it was very high level kind of clientele.
Yep.
And it was a lot of rosé wine, Saint Tropez, Saint Tropez atmosphere, music, and food, and the folks that were actually kind of going there too. So I'm very familiar with Andre Balaz and his properties.
Yeah.
It's funny that you actually worked for him, that worked with him.
Yeah. He's quite a character, as I'm sure you know.
Oh my God, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Okay, chef, thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
So, all right, that's the North Star. So if you could tell us maybe then the story you gave me when we first spoke was I thought was excellent.
Mm.
Unless you have a better one than that, that'd be killer. But if you could tell us one of the biggest challenge I think that sticks out to you that came with Heirloom Fire, the opening, the beginnings of it, or anything that comes to mind, and you say what has been the biggest challenge for you with this company.
Yeah, I think probably at the time and place I was in my life, the story I told you was pretty paramount. I think I haven't faced anything exactly like that, but they're all sort of, I think it really kind of most challenging sort of comes in the areas of your life where, yeah, when you've never done anything like it. So I think if I had that particular challenge, like the one I was telling you about, which I'll talk about here now, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. So, yeah,
Mhm.
early in our career, well, early-ish, I think it was 2018. We had a very busy year, 2018. We traveled all over the place. It was just one thing after another, huge events. We did a wedding in Maryland for 300 people, and it rained for 2 weeks before it. It was insane. So, anyways, before that, we had been talking to this client and he was getting married, but he wanted to have us come up, but it just wouldn't have worked because financially it didn't make sense. But then something happened where he had a windfall in his life and revisited the conversation about a year later. And it was to go and do a wedding in Canada for he and his fiance at the time. They both met at a summer camp. So it was right on Lake Huron. And it was going to be, yeah, they rented out the whole camp and all that. And I was like, oh, okay, they're very exciting. Spoke with them just like we normally would. And, I have no idea what it's like. I mean, I think of Canada and it's sort of like, yeah, it's in some ways it feels just like an extension of the United States. I don't mean to be disrespectful to any,
Right.
Canucks out there, but,
Of course
you
not.
don't think. So
Now it would be a little disrespectful to them. Nowadays, it might be a little disrespectful
sure.
to them.
Yeah, sure. So we, our biggest thing was how can we was make sure we're dotting our T's or dotting our I's and crossing our T's. So we contacted the border control just to see like, hey, here's the story. We're doing a wedding and everything above board. And how do we, what do we need in order to come over to the country to do a wedding? And it was amazing to us how much of a gray area it was. We couldn't get a straight answer. The most helpful thing we got after talking to about 5 different people was, well, you need to work with the broker. The broker will know how you have to handle this. So we started looking at brokers, somebody to basically manage it, and they'll know exactly what it is. So they take a commission. So we didn't pay the person anything, but the idea was that, what they told us is that, okay, this is what you need to do in order to cross the border to a different country. You need to make a manifest of every single thing you're bringing. And with you, since it's food related, anything food has ever touched, you need to make a catalog of what the piece is, what it's used for, and where it was manufactured. Now, it doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but it took, some time, about a good week for us to do all that. We had everything deep cleaned. We power washed everything. And the crew was packing up. We allocated one extra day just to get up there to kind of, prepare for anything that may be challenging. So everyone had left. Everything's like every container, bus tub, a fish tub, everything's, Post-it notes, printed off Excel sheets, all that jazz. So I had an assistant that was working for me, 2 of them, and one of them was just very much a nervous Nelly, and good on her for that in this
Mhm.
case. So she's like, I just feel like we need to call again because I just want to make sure. Let's just double check, triple check everything. So she calls up and gets a hold of somebody who actually knows what they're talking about. Now, meanwhile, she's talking to them. My other assistant is saying, yeah, I just heard back from the Canadian side, and they said it's going to cost $6,000 to get into the country. And from the
Mhm.
broker. And I'm like, really? I said, what do you mean to get into Canada? That's ridiculous. It's got to be the whole.
Yeah.
And she's like, he only said Canada. I said, no, I think you must have heard them wrong. So, meanwhile, this person, I get on the phone and talk to this guy because she's like, you need to talk to this guy. And the guy's like, hi, what's going on? I explain it to him. He's like, oh yeah, you guys, we're supposed to be leaving the next day. He's like, oh yeah, you guys you can't come up here. And I'm like, I start feeling that lump in my throat, the hair standing up the back of my neck. I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, well, you guys need to apply for working papers, and he's like, for starters. And I'm like, okay, is there any way that we can expedite that process? And he's like, you and I both know the answer to that question. And I was like, okay. And he's like, and also your client should have known that he has to actually provide something to the government stating that he has looked all over the country and there's absolutely nobody in the country of Canada that's doing what you're doing to justify to bring you up out of the country. And I'm like, okay. He's like, yeah, so, there's a lot of things here. And I'm like, okay. And then I said, well, thank you for that. So I get off the phone, my wheels are turning. I'm thinking about what it is we have to do. Now we hear from the American side, and it was going to be around $7,000 to get back into the States. And I said, what? So $13,000, like, to run all this paperwork. And they're like, yeah. And you need to let us know right now because we have all the papers out on the desk and we're ready to go. And if this is going to happen, it's got to happen now. So I'm like, holy shit, what am I going to do here? So I call up my sous chef who had left, and he was like basically 2 steps away from being feral. He was just a wild, wild guy. And he said to me, James, is it okay if I go a little feral up when we go to Canada? I'm like, yeah, I don't even know what that means. I don't know if I want to know what that means. So, which basically just meant him like sleeping deep in the woods in a, whatever canopy. But so I called him up. I was like, hey, man, let me ask you, do you feel comfortable with actually physically building a kitchen in one day? And his response was, I don't know, can I swear on this or no? Okay.
Yeah.
His response was, fuck yeah. And I'm like, okay, great. So I get off the phone with him. I call up the groom and I say, hey, man, this is a scenario. I want to be straight transparent with you. These issues have come up. However, what we're going to do is we're not going to bring any of that equipment across. We're going to go up there and actually build a kitchen, and you're not going to know the difference. But I just wanted to let you know. And he said, wow, you guys are out of your fucking mind. I love it. I'm just not going to tell Sonia. And I was like, okay, great. Sounds good.
Yeah. Bridezilla.
Yeah. So anyhow, I come back inside. I'm like, listen, just tell the brokers we're going to go ahead and, sorry, we're not going to be able to make this work. Sorry to have wasted their time. We're going to, kind of just let this go and take this as a wash. Then immediately I had my other assistant call like their version of a Home Depot up there and start putting in a wood order and a steel order for us to build things. So, I had to send my team a voice memo, just kind of letting them know the updated situation and start to plan for people to carpool up. And we all carpooled up. And, our first stop was going to like a U-Haul to get a vehicle. A second stop was going to the steel manufacturer place. This was on a Friday. The wedding was going to be on a Saturday. Got all the gear, made it just to the steel place before they closed, because that would have been a huge problem to get big steel sheets. As we're driving up, my sous chef and I are just like, okay, we need to make these tables. So he's putting together a wood order. So we literally built tables. We built shelving units that could go into trees that we attached with wire so we weren't drilling into the trees. We went to a Goodwill so that everything, we have a very specific aesthetic. So we went to Goodwill and found things like old copper mugs and, sort of zinc flour and sugar containers, all that type of stuff. We returned it back to Goodwill after the event. Yeah, we got there. We set up everything. We spent that evening prepping into the late night for some specific dishes that they wanted. Yeah, we got up the next day. It's like they had us put it up in a cabin, and this is a good sized campground. So the whole like wedding family kind of knows that we came from out of the country, and they all decided to like set up shop outside of our cabin, or like a bonfire and drink in. And they're like, Heirloom Fire, come out. And I'm like, guys, I appreciate it. And under any other circumstance, I would, but you have no idea what friggin' stuff we've been through. So if we come up, we're not going to have a wedding tomorrow if we come out. So, and the guy was friends with a dude who had a brewery. So it was just like they had those bullet kegs. I think they drank something like 23 of them that weekend. They just were drinking the whole time. But, to this day, we were doing our whole thing. And when the groom got up and gave his speech and he had announced our story, and that was the first time anybody had heard it, I don't think we'd ever gotten any kind of standing ovation like that. So that's still definitely burnt in my mind for the rest of my days. Yeah, it was a wild trip, man. It was something.
That is an awesome story. I love hearing stuff like that because in hospitality, you have to be able to pivot. If you can't do that, you're gonna you're just not gonna make it. Every time, no matter what you do, and the amount of prep that goes into something that you did like that, whether you're doing it at home or across the border, is absolutely staggering. I don't think people really understand the amount of work that goes into. Unless you watched The Bear recently on Hulu, people have no idea what it takes for making a reservation, walking in, and then the server coming up to them immediately within 2 minutes and being like, my name, so-and-so, this is the spiel, get drinks, and then have the appetizers come in, 5 minutes or less, since they make the order along with the drinks. not too much longer than the drinks arrived, and then have the second course be ready to fire as soon. Like all those things that look like it's easy, like why isn't it my plate here? Is people really just don't get it. When someone has a great experience at a restaurant, from the booking to the server to the bartender to the prep that made the food get there right on time, the food takes forever. That takes like a day sometimes. Sometimes the prep for the food takes an
Oh, for
entire
sure.
day just to get that ready so that when they order it, you can fire it and be ready in like 10
Yeah.
minutes and the plate's hot and then the dessert's ready and then the coffee's ready and then like espresso martinis
Hmm.
and the next thing and whatnot. Like people don't understand the amount of prep work and knowledge and execution that it takes to. It's a
Yeah.
ballet that it takes to make all these things happen and seem
Sure.
seamless. Our expectations are pretty high when it comes to like a good restaurant or, God forbid, a wedding, like with a bride that expects everything to be
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
The expectations are really high, but the understanding is quite low. So kudos on that. That's the story that I definitely wanted you
Yeah.
to tell. Going over the border, like what, 48 hours before you found out that you
Hmm.
couldn't, or they're going to charge you at least $13,000 to go to and fro,
Yeah.
is pretty nuts.
That's
That's insane.
insane.
So congrats on that one, Chef. That's a really cool
Thank you.
story. That's the kind of thing that people at least kind of gives them the understanding of what it is that, I want to say we, but because I don't work in the kitchen, but what you guys do in kitchens that is absolutely staggering.
Yeah.
So that's a very cool story. Thanks
You're
for
very
that one.
welcome. And it's also really interesting with that type of, aspect is because when we're performing at our highest absolute like pinnacle peak, um, way, the key is to not have people notice it, which is kind of ironic, right? I mean, you're faced with all these
Right.
challenges and
The swan
yeah, and
theory.
if they don't, if nothing shows, that's what we aim for. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
wild. So, but it's all very fun.
It's like a referee. When you don't notice them, you're doing a great
Exactly
job.
right. Yeah, that's right, man. Yeah.
Chef, you touched on like work ethic and ADD. I think that's something that if you don't have, especially when it's something so meticulous like executing, an event or three-course meal in a restaurant or an outside kitchen, without that kind of attention to detail, I really don't think you can have a very successful like culture, the trickle down effect on a kitchen staff. Like you mentioned that you have to have like this, you're just like over the top a little bit, but that's why it's so good. That's what makes it so like it separates the best kitchens and the best restaurants from an okay dinner. Like the service was amazing, but the food was okay.
Yeah.
Whatever.
No, I really think, growing up, I grew up in the generation where, like, I mean, I don't know. So let me be first and foremost very clear that I have never been diagnosed with ADD or anything like that. I joke about it, but I'm sure there's something there for
Yeah.
sure. But I grew up in a generation where there's like a stigma around that. There's also a stigma about going to therapy or mental
Right.
health. And, if you're on
Hmm.
antidepressants, you don't say anything or whatever. I mean, all that stuff is very real. I've been in positions like, like when
Yeah.
you're in the weeds, it's sort of like you go blank. It's
Yeah.
something that it's like, it's one of the
Yep.
weirdest feelings ever, but that's like some form of a panic attack. You're having it and you can't
Yeah.
step off the line. It's like you have to stand there in the fire and take
Hmm.
it, and then like my experience is at least once you were faced with that exact same situation again in the future, it's some sort of scar tissue that almost, I don't know, I've never had the same experience twice when it comes like that. So it's pretty wild, but yeah, I mean,
Right.
I would with whatever stressors, I mean, I think my brain really never turns off. I think, the thing that I love about what I do is that, really there is nobody to tell me no, for better or for worse. Sometimes there probably should be, but I also don't surround myself with yes people. I'd be like, I want your opinion matters.
Right.
I want to hear it. Talk to me about it.
Yeah.
Because I really believe you can learn anything, you can learn something from just about anybody, even if you're standing, like, let's say, getting coffee at a coffee shop and you are watching the person in front of you get coffee and all of a sudden they, maybe step to the right to, or, move something and move in a certain way. And you're like, huh, interesting. That's one less step. I could see that could be a little bit more, efficient or whatever. That's just a crazy example.
Right.
My mind is always going. The work deeply feeds me with what I do. I mean, the line between my personal life and my work life is very thin, if there's one there at all. But going to like an ADD thing, it's like I've definitely been in places where I could be doing something completely random. Then all of a sudden, holy shit, I never placed an order for this, or, oh shit, I got to tell this person
Yeah.
that. And that's, I think, it's a gift, in a lot of ways. It doesn't stress me out. I think it's like a superpower,
Right.
this like intuition.
Yeah. It's pivot. You have to pivot. And God, that's a heart, like my heart sinks. I remember when I used to be a server and like, especially when the expectations are high, the higher up you get in like good those nice restaurants. I worked for I was fortunate enough to work for a couple good chefs, Laurent Tourondel. I was at BLT Miami Beach, and that was a very fine dining steakhouse. And you can
Mm.
imagine the brunch. It was on Sunday for that place. It was God, I'm not gonna curse, but it was a butt
Yeah.
kicking, and the clientele is people who have
Yeah.
money that they're expected like now.
Yeah.
Why? Your fault. And so that stuff that when and then after that, was lucky enough to because of that one I parlayed that and I was able to get a job, work for Chef Michael Schwartz, and he had coming fresh off of James Beard, and again, the clientele like they know he's on TV, people know it, that he has a marketing campaign, everyone knows about it. They hype it up as much as they can so that most people go to the
Sure.
restaurant. And when I would forget to order a main course for like the lady of the table, and like
Oh.
everyone else got their food, I was like, oh my God, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, even now I get like
Yeah.
goosebumps just thinking about it. Like it's the worst. I remember having a nightmare one time. I was working at the Standard, and this is silly, but this is how much trauma goes into when you do forget something like that. Like, and like you said, you get scared of it one time, and the next time you just learn how to pivot. But and this didn't really happen. This is just an irrational dream. I was on an airplane going home to visit my family, and in Dominican Republic, and on the airplane, I'm like, oh my God, I forgot to order her Coke. And in the plane, I'm like, turn the plane
Yes.
around. We got to go get back to Miami so I can go order the Coke, deliver it to
Isn't
the
it
table,
crazy?
which is so
No, but
stupid.
that
It's
trauma.
crazy. Well, that's how like ingrained the trauma gets into like, the pressures of like being in the hospitality industry when you're in the
Yeah.
weeds. So I could feel you on that one for sure. That's definitely a big
Yeah.
deal. Chef, something you touched on a little bit earlier was about, the toxic dynamic that you can find yourself in certain work environments. I think that's when we were talking about like the biggest challenges or how you even got into what you were doing now. I think that's one of the main reasons that, those things that make you say, forget this place or forget like having a job. I want to be the one in charge. I want to be of the boss because I can do this better than everyone is like, or however this was organized by the higher ups, so to speak. So that's kind of like something that I wanted to touch on because again, I don't think you'd be here if you wouldn't have had those experiences, which can be like negative and toxic. I've worked at some awful places too. I've worked at some cool places, but I've also had some experiences which is like completely unorganized, lack of attention. I wish that guy had ADD, maybe a little bit, just to kind
Yeah.
of have the details like organized because that's where the devil is. It's in the
Yes.
details. And if I can say just for the record that I'm not taking, neither one of us here is taking ADD lightly. I know ADD was using it as a joke, but this is something that some folks out there definitely suffer from.
Yeah.
And, we just kind of, we use it as like borrowed pain, so to
Sure.
speak, when we find ourselves in those situations. We're not insensitive to that. I know you're not
No,
either, Chef.
definitely not. And, tell you what, next time I come on, I'll go get
Yeah.
diagnosed. It's probably about time I did anyway, so then I can say that I am. Yeah, no, it's totally, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, you go through those things. It's very important to learn. I mean, what I used to say when I had been in other really bad businesses is, well, I learned how not to run a business, and obviously I'm not a professional, by any means. Well, I mean, I am in certain things, but I'm
Well,
not like,
I don't know that you're not a
yeah,
professional.
but I'm not like, this amazing world renowned entrepreneur that's like perfect. No, but, those challenges I think are important. And, it's like really what it comes down to. I mean, for us, after every single event, we have a weekly standing meeting where we review the last events that we did, what we liked, what we didn't like, how I know a couple things for us to pay attention to and correct for the next one, what's going on this coming weekend, to making sure we're good on staffing, any sort of special dietary restrictions are all recorded. And then, just sort of a forecast to the following week after that to say, hey, if it's an out of town gig, do we have accommodations lined up and things like that. There's really like I've worked in places where it's like when there's mistake happens and people don't even want to talk about it, just don't let it happen again next time. Okay, well, how did it happen? It's like that's what's
Yeah.
important is like let's talk about how we got there.
Yeah.
And
Let's
let's
figure it out.
not like scream and yell at people. That's not a thing of mine. Like I worked in some other places too, where it's like the first thing they want to know, well, who's responsible for it? It's like, okay, before we like crucify somebody publicly, can we firstly dig
Yeah.
ourselves out of this hole we just got ourselves in? Let's do that first. And then you can find out who that is. And you take that
Yeah.
person outside and have a, very personal conversation with them. And then the people that it pertains to, get to learn into it. But it's definitely a lot of, I've had a few people on my team where I've been completely guilty of it, where it's a person person that is no longer fit for the job, or the business grew and that person hasn't been able
Right.
to keep up. So, I try to find another space for them. But if we just don't have a space for them anymore, the unfortunate truth is we have to let them go, because it's very dangerous to have to keep somebody on that you can feel comfortable publicly shaming, or as I say, like a punching bag, because I know it's not good for me if it's
Yeah.
somebody that's just, you know what
That's
I mean? And, it feels good, I think, in those
yeah.
times when you're underneath stress to be like, what are you, an idiot? To some, it's some maybe aspects of your life, until you start to dig in like, okay, we don't need that. It doesn't make anybody feel comfortable. I don't run a kitchen where I'm screaming and yelling at folks. Like, if I have to tell somebody,
Right.
if it's like they're just not learning it, then they just don't come back. And that's what's also challenging about this job too, is like
Right.
the
Yeah.
learning curve is
True.
very steep. It's not like, it's hard for us to bring somebody on to be a part of our kitchen crew, our main core kitchen crew at our home base, to bring them on completely green. It's like, it's not a restaurant where we have the privilege to be able to train them long term. It's like, when you come in, you have to know how to make a salad dressing. You have to know how to emulsify an aioli.
Right.
These are all like basic things. I mean, what we do is so complicated. You just have to know how to cook well in your sleep, essentially, because there's so many other moving
Right.
pieces. Plus, it's very hard for me to hire somebody out of the culinary world, because they're so ingrained, and they're so used to coming in and working their station. So, right, they come in at noontime, they prep for their station, they go through service, end of the night, they make their prep list, go out to the bar. Maybe it's not everybody, but you get out at late hours, you're exhausted, then you come in the next day. Some people are hungover, whatever, right? This job is, there's no one station. We're doing
Yeah.
everything.
Before we sign off, a quick and important note about this episode. You might notice that our conversation with Chef James ended rather abruptly. Unfortunately, due to some technical difficulty, we were not able to get the very back end of the episode. But we just want to say our thank yous to Chef James for taking time out of his very busy day and Heirloom Fire running the kitchen. Chef, your insights and passion and amazing stories truly made the episode special. You absolutely have to check out their work. Heirloom Fire is based in the Berkshire Hills of Massachusetts. They offer high-end open fire catering and immersive public dining events. Find out more about their culinary experiences at heirloomfire.com. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the VELSTRAT podcast.